Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. Why? Why are my breasts getting bigger? My life, for the first 33 years, felt like a book I was forced to read in a language I didn't quite understand. The plot was simple enough. I was David, an office worker in a mid-sized accounting firm. I lived alone in a clean beige apartment that was neither cozy nor cold. I had a decent car, a 401k, and a routine so predictable you could set a watch by it. On paper, it was a life, but in practice, it felt like a costume, one that was a size too small in all the wrong places. The feeling was a low, constant hum of unease. It was a restlessness that settled deep in my bones, a persistent whisper on the edge of my hearing that I could never quite make out. It was worst at night, in the quiet dark of my bedroom. When the distractions of the day fell away, I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, feeling a profound sense of absence. It was as if a crucial part of me was missing, or perhaps a part of me was there that shouldn't have been. My own body felt like a stranger's house I was borrowing. I was a guest, polite and quiet, but never truly at home. This strange internal friction had been my companion for as long as I could remember, a shadow I couldn't shake. I'd tried to ignore it, to bury it under overtime and weekend projects, but it always resurfaced, patient and persistent. It was the feeling of being fundamentally out of sync with my own existence. The day it all started to change was a Tuesday. It was gray and unremarkable, the kind of day that usually vanishes from memory the moment it's over. I'd just left work, my shoulders tight with the familiar tension of spreadsheets and deadlines. I was driving home, my mind on autopilot, when I took a different turn. I still don't know why. It was an impulse, a twitch of the steering wheel that led me down a street I rarely used, and that's when I saw a small, brightly lit shop tucked between a laundromat and a pizza place. Vitality Health and Supplements. I had no reason to go in. I wasn't a health nut. My medicine cabinet contained nothing more exciting than aspirin and a bottle of multivitamins I always forgot to take, but something pulled me. I parked the car, my engine still running for a moment as I stared at the storefront. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff I hadn't known was there. With a deep breath that did nothing to calm the frantic beating of my heart, I turned off the car and went inside. The store smelled of vitamins and herbal tea, a clean, earthy scent. Shelves were lined with bottles of every shape and size, promising everything from muscle growth to mental clarity. I wandered the aisles, feeling like an imposter. My hands were clammy. I was just browsing, I told myself, just killing time. But my feet carried me to a section in the back, under a sign that read Hormonal Health. My eyes scanned the labels, a jumble of scientific names and promises, and then I saw it. The bottle was small and unassuming, with a gentle pastel-colored label, but the words on it hit me like a physical blow. Estro Balance, Natural Feminine Support. Time seemed to slow down. The air grew thick in my lungs. My ears burned with a heat that spread down my neck and across my chest. A voice screamed in my head, "What are you doing? Walk away. Get out of here right now." But I couldn't move. My gaze was fixed on that bottle. It was absurd. It was insane. It was also the only thing in the entire store that felt real, the only thing that seemed to speak directly to the nameless ache inside me. What am I doing?" I whispered to myself, the words a faint puff of air. My hand trembled as I reached out. The cool glass of the bottle felt like a jolt of electricity against my skin. It was impossibly heavy, weighted with a significance I couldn't begin to comprehend. I looked around, terrified someone might see me, might understand the insane, world-altering transaction that was happening in my mind. The store was empty except for a young man behind the counter, absorbed in his phone. My heart hammered against my ribs. I had to have it. With a final convulsive movement, I snatched the bottle off the shelf. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. To cover my tracks, to create a plausible reason for being there, I grabbed a large bottle of vitamin B12 from a nearby shelf. At the checkout, I placed the B12 on the counter first, a bulky, sensible shield for the small, terrifying bottle of Estro Balance I placed behind it. "Just these two today?" the clerk asked, not even looking up from his screen. I could only manage a choked nod. I paid in cash, fumbling with the bills, my fingers feeling clumsy and disconnected from my brain. I shoved the small paper bag into my coat pocket and practically ran out of the store, not daring to look back. I sat in my car for a full 5 minutes, the bag a burning weight in my pocket, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I had crossed a line, and I knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and exhilarating, that nothing would ever be the same again. Taking that first pill felt like performing a secret, forbidden ritual. I did it in the sterile quiet of my bathroom, the door locked, the water running to cover any sound. The small white tablet looked so innocent in the palm of my hand. I stared at it for a long time, my reflection in the mirror looking back at me with wide, fearful eyes. This was madness. I was a 33-year-old man. What was I hoping to achieve? What disaster was I inviting into my quiet, orderly life? But the whisper was there again, louder this time, insistent, just try. I swallowed the pill with a gulp of water, and the act felt final, irreversible. It was a secret, a crime, a confession. I did it again the next day, and the day after that, each morning became a small act of rebellion against the life I was supposed to be living. For 2 weeks, nothing happened, or at least nothing I could definitively point to. I felt a constant low-grade anxiety, a hyper-awareness of my own body, waiting for some cataclysmic change, and then, slowly, the subtleties began to emerge. It started with my skin. One evening, while washing my face, I noticed it. My hand glided over my cheek, and the texture was different, softer, smoother. I spent minutes just touching my own face, my arms, my chest, marveling at this impossible new softness that felt both alien and intimately familiar. Then came the hair on my arms and legs. It seemed to grow back slower after a shower, the strands finer, less coarse. It was a small thing, something no one else would ever notice. But to me, it was a seismic shift. My voice began to change, too, but not in a way I could control. Sometimes, when I was talking to myself or answering the phone, a word would come out lighter, higher pitched, with a softer edge. It would startle me every time. A strange melody emerging from an instrument I thought I knew how to play. The most unsettling change was emotional. I'd always been stoic, level-headed, but now I found myself choking up during a sappy commercial. A sad song on the radio could make my throat tighten and my eyes well up. It was as if a dam inside me had cracked, and emotions I had kept neatly contained for years were beginning to seep through. I felt raw, vulnerable, exposed. And then came the morning that changed everything. It was a Thursday. About 3 weeks after I started taking the pills, I was in my bedroom, getting dressed for work, pulling a crisp, white button-down shirt from my closet. As I swung my arm through the sleeve, a sharp, sudden ache shot through the right side of my chest. It was a stinging, focused pain, right behind the nipple. I froze, my arm still half in the sleeve. What the? I touched the spot gingerly with my fingertips, and I felt it. A small, firm lump, about the size of a pea. It was tender to the touch, and when I pressed it, the same sharp throb radiated outwards. Panic seized me, cold and absolute. My mind raced through a catalog of horrible diseases. This was it. This was my punishment for tampering with nature, for wanting something I had no right to. No, I gasped, stumbling back until I hit the edge of my bed. No, 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 it can't be. I sat there, my shirt half on, my world tilting on its axis. I was terrified. It felt like my body was betraying me, developing some monstrous, unnatural growth. But then, as the initial wave of fear began to recede, something else rose up in its place. It was a strange, quiet, and profoundly shocking feeling. It was relief. Deep in my heart, in the place where the whisper lived, this frightening, painful lump felt right. It felt like a sign. It was the first physical proof that something was truly, undeniably changing. The secret I had been carrying inside me was no longer just a thought, a desire, a strange pill I swallowed in the dark. It was becoming real. It was growing, quite literally, inside of me. My chest throbbed, a beacon of pain and promise, and for the first time, a terrifying question formed in my mind, clear as a bell. Why is my chest throbbing like this? And for the first time, I knew the answer. It wasn't a sickness. It was a beginning. The curiosity that had led me to the supplement store now morphed into a raging fire. The changes in my body, once terrifying, were now a source of endless fascination. The small, tender buds on my chest were a constant reminder of the secret journey I was on. Every brush of my shirt against them sent a little shiver, a mix of pain and pleasure, through me. My life was now divided into two parts: the David who went to work and paid his bills, and the secret person at home who spent hours in front of the mirror, cataloging every subtle shift. This growing curiosity led me, inevitably, to the internet late at night with the curtains drawn. I fell down a rabbit hole of online shopping. My fingers trembled as I typed words into the search bar that I had never dared to say out loud: satin nightgown, women's lingerie, silk robes. Each click of the mouse felt like a step into a forbidden world. Finally, I found it. It was a simple slip dress, a nightgown made of deep purple satin that the website claimed flowed like liquid. It looked soft, delicate, and impossibly feminine. Ordering it was one of the most nerve-wracking things I had ever done. I created a new, anonymous email address and paid with a prepaid gift card I'd bought with cash from a grocery store. I had it shipped to a post office box in the next town over. The entire process felt like a spy operation, my heart pounding with a mixture of shame and wild, uncontrollable excitement. When the plain brown package finally arrived a week later, I drove it home like it was a bomb. I took it into my bedroom and locked the door, my hands shaking as I tore it open. The nightgown spilled out, a pool of shimmering purple fabric. It was even more beautiful than in the pictures. I held it up to my face. It was cool and smelled faintly of the plastic it had been wrapped in. Taking off my own clothes, my stiff work pants, my starchy shirt, my plain men's underwear felt like shedding a heavy, ill-fitting skin. I stood in my room, vulnerable and pale in the dim light, and then I pulled the nightgown over my head. The sensation was electric. The satin cascaded down my body, a cool, whispering caress against my newly sensitive skin. It was so light it felt like I was wearing nothing at all. The fabric clung softly to my hips and draped over the small, growing swell of my chest, the delicate straps resting on my shoulders. It was a feeling so completely alien, and yet so profoundly right. I walked to the full-length mirror on my closet door and looked. I barely recognized the person staring back. It wasn't David. The figure in the mirror was softer, the lines of the body blurred by the fluid grace of the satin. The purple fabric made my skin look paler, and the shape of my shoulders seemed less broad. It wasn't a woman I was seeing, not yet, but it was no longer the man I had been my whole life. It was someone in between, a ghost of a possibility. I stayed there for what must have been an hour, just looking, turning from side to side, watching how the fabric moved with me. A sense of peace, something I hadn't felt in years, settled over me. That nightgown became my secret comfort. Wearing it was like stepping into another reality, and in that reality, my body was beginning to speak a new language. I started to notice sensations I had never felt before. When I walked around my apartment in the slip, I was aware of a faint, pulling sensation in my lower abdomen, a new consciousness of my own center of gravity. The simple act of the fabric brushing against my thighs sent shivers up my spine. The ache in my chest was now a familiar companion, a dull, constant throb that intensified whenever anything touched it. I found myself talking to my reflection, my voice unconsciously pitching higher. "This feels nice," I would whisper, and the sound of that softer voice would send a thrill through me. I was exploring myself, learning the contours of this new person who was emerging from the shell of the old one. The journey inward soon turned outward again. If clothes could feel this right, what else was there? My late-night online searches turned from clothing to cosmetics. I watched hours of makeup tutorials, mesmerized by the transformative power of foundation, mascara, and eyeliner. It seemed like a form of magic. I started small, A tube of concealer, purchased from a drugstore at a self-checkout kiosk. I dabbed a tiny amount under my eyes, and the dark circles I'd always had seemed to melt away, my face instantly looking brighter, softer. It was another small victory, another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. The real challenge was eyeliner. I bought a cheap liquid liner pen and sat in front of my bathroom mirror. My heart thumping, my hand was so unsteady. The first attempt was a disaster. A thick, jagged black line that made me look like I had a black eye. I scrubbed it off, my skin red and irritated, and felt a surge of frustration. This was stupid. I was a man playing dress-up. But the desire was stronger than the shame. I tried again and again. I watched more tutorials, mimicking the steady hands of the women on the screen. Finally, one evening, I managed a thin, wavering line along my upper lash line. It was far from perfect, but it changed everything. It made my eyes look bigger, more expressive. It framed them in a way that drew attention to their color, a hazel I had never much noticed before. I started letting my hair grow out. For years, I'd kept it in a short, sensible, professional cut. Now, I let it go. It went through an awkward, shaggy phase, but as it grew long enough to brush against the collar of my shirt, to touch the nape of my neck, it felt like another piece of me was being restored. One night, I did the whole routine. I put on the purple nightgown, applied the concealer, and drew a shaky line of eyeliner on each eye. I brushed my growing hair so it fell softly around my face. I looked at the reflection, at this strange and beautiful person who was taking shape in the mirror, and then a name floated into my mind. It came from nowhere. Iaftarat, gentle sound. D, I whispered. My new voice tested the name, tasting it. Adai. It felt right. It felt like home. It didn't feel like I was inventing a character. It felt like I was finally remembering my own name. The man in the mirror was David. But this person, the one who was emerging, the one who felt true and real, she was Dowie. My secret world began to expand. A single nightgown was no longer enough. The urge to build a wardrobe for Dowie was overwhelming. I started a secret stash, a small storage box that I kept under my bed. It became my treasure chest. The first addition was a set of soft, wireless bras. I ordered them online, using a sizing guide and guessing as best I could. The day they arrived, I tried one on. The feeling of the soft cotton cups enclosing my sensitive, aching chest was a revelation. It wasn't constricting. It was a gentle, reassuring embrace. It was comfort. It was support. It felt like protection. Next came underwear. I bought a multi-pack of simple cotton bikini briefs in pastel colors, pale pink, baby blue, soft lavender. They were so different from the rough, utilitarian men's boxers I had worn my entire life. They were soft, they were pretty, and wearing them under my drab work clothes was a delicious secret, a silent rebellion that only I knew about. Soon, the box started to fill up. A simple A-line dress with a floral pattern, a soft navy blue cardigan, a fitted women's blouse in a silky material that felt wonderful against my skin. Each item was chosen with care, a piece of a puzzle I was slowly assembling. Sometimes at night, I would take everything out of the box and just look at it, touch the different fabrics, and imagine a life where I could wear these things not just in secret, but out in the world. David was the person I was during the day. He was a shell, a performance. But at night, in the privacy of my apartment, I was Dowie, and with every new piece of clothing, with every successful swipe of eyeliner, I felt her growing stronger, more real. I was no longer just piecing together a wardrobe, I was piecing together myself. Living a double life was exhausting. The constant switching between David and Dowie felt like a form of mental gymnastics. David was quiet, reserved, and wore a uniform of gray suits and beige khakis. Dowie was blossoming in secret, finding joy in soft fabrics and the hint of a new curve at her hip. The disconnect between my two worlds was becoming a chasm, and I felt myself being stretched thin across it. I longed for a world where they could be one. The first crack in the wall between those two worlds happened on a Saturday afternoon. I had grown bolder in my secret shopping trips. I had graduated from anonymous online orders to actually setting foot inside women's clothing stores, though always under a pretext. I'm looking for a gift for my sister. I'd mumble if a sales associate approached me, my heart hammering in my chest. On this particular day, I was in a department store. My sister excuse ready on my lips. I was browsing a rack of cardigans, my fingers lingering on a soft, cashmere blend in a lovely shade of teal. I was so engrossed in the feeling of the fabric, in imagining how it would feel against my skin, that I didn't notice the saleswoman approaching. "That's a beautiful color," she said, her voice warm and friendly. I jumped, startled, my face flushing with heat. "Are you finding everything okay?" "Oh, yes," I stammered, my voice cracking. "I'm just looking for my sister." The lie felt clumsy and obvious in my mouth. The woman, who was probably in her late 50s with kind eyes, smiled gently. She looked at the cardigan in my hand, then at me. I was wearing my usual weekend disguise jeans, a loose-fitting men's shirt, and a baseball cap pulled down low. But I'd been letting my hair grow, and it was now long enough to be tied back in a small, messy ponytail. I hadn't shaved that morning, but my facial hair was becoming much finer and sparser, and I was wearing one of Doey's soft bras under my shirt, a secret comfort. She tilted her head slightly. "You know," she said, her voice dropping a little, becoming more confidential. "With your shoulders, I think a size small would be more flattering on you. It would drape much better." She then paused and added, with a knowing, gentle smile, "It would really suit you, ma'am." The world stopped. "Ma'am?" The word hung in the air between us. It wasn't mocking, it wasn't sarcastic. It was just a statement of fact, delivered with the casual kindness of a retail professional helping a customer. An electric shock coursed through my entire body. I stood there, frozen, the teal cardigan clutched in my hand. Part of me was terrified, exposed, like a secret agent whose cover had just been blown. I felt a desperate urge to run, to deny it, to stammer, "No, you don't understand. I'm a man." But another, much stronger part of me was soaring. It was a feeling of pure, unadulterated euphoria. She saw me, through the baggy clothes and the leftover stubble. She saw the person I was trying to become. That single, simple word, "ma'am," was the most profound validation I had ever experienced. It was an acknowledgement that I wasn't crazy, that Doey wasn't just a fantasy confined to my apartment. She was real enough for a stranger to see. I think I mumbled a thank you. I don't remember buying the cardigan or even leaving the store. All I remember is the feeling of that word echoing in my mind, a warm, glowing ember in my chest. It was a turning point. The fear was still there, but now it was joined by a powerful new force, hope. That single moment of acceptance gave me a courage I never thought I possessed. The idea of going out in public as Doey, once a terrifying and distant fantasy, now seemed like a real, tangible possibility. It took me weeks to build up the nerve. I practiced at home, putting together an outfit that was simple and inconspicuous, something that wouldn't draw attention. I settled on a navy blue midi dress. It was modest, with a hemline well below the knee and the teal cardigan from the department store. I did my makeup with painstaking care, keeping it light and natural, just a little concealer, a single coat of mascara, and a touch of nude lip gloss. I put my hair up in a simple clip. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman. She was nervous, her eyes wide with apprehension, but she was a woman. This was it. I chose a Sunday morning, a quiet time. My plan was simple, just walk to the coffee shop at the end of my street, buy a latte, and walk back, a 10-minute round trip. It felt like preparing to climb Mount Everest. My hands were sweating so much I had to wipe them on my dress. I put on a pair of simple flat shoes, took my purse, a small crossbody bag I'd bought online, and opened my apartment door. Stepping into the hallway felt like stepping onto a stage. Every sound was amplified, the hum of the building's ventilation, the distant sound of a television, my own frantic heartbeat. The walk to the elevator was the longest of my life. I was convinced a neighbor would appear, point a finger, and scream, but no one did. Walking on the street was even more terrifying. The world seemed too bright, too loud. I felt as though every person I passed was staring at me, dissecting me, judging me. I kept my eyes fixed on the pavement in front of me. My steps hurried. Then, as I was waiting to cross a small side street, an elderly woman walking her little white dog stopped beside me. She smiled, a sweet, crinkled smile. "Good morning," she said. "Good morning," I managed to reply, my voice coming out as a soft, breathy whisper. She looked at me, her gaze lingering on my face for a moment. "My, you have such beautiful eyes. Dear," she said kindly. "They're a lovely shade of green." My face erupted in a blush. It was such a simple, passing compliment, the kind of small talk strangers make. But to me, it was everything. It was the second time a stranger had looked at me and seen a woman. A dear. The warmth that spread through my chest was so intense it almost brought tears to my eyes. I mumbled another thank you, and when the light changed, I practically floated across the street. The rest of the walk to the coffee shop was a blur of happiness. I went inside, ordered my latte with a quiet, "Thank you, sir," to the barista, and walked home. I had done it. I had been out in the world as Doey, and the world had not ended. In fact, the world had been kind. Those two experiences, the saleswoman and the woman with the dog, were the final push I needed. I couldn't keep living as two people. It was unsustainable, and more importantly, I didn't want to hide anymore. The thought of coming out at work was the most daunting prospect I had ever faced. My job was my livelihood, my stability, but the idea of spending another day, another year, sitting at my desk as David was becoming unbearable. I scheduled a meeting with Sarah, the head of our human resources department. I practiced what I was going to say 100 times. My script memorized, but my stomach in knots. I dressed in what I considered my most professional women's attire, a pair of black trousers, a simple white blouse, and a blazer. I wore minimal makeup. I was trying to project an image of calm, confident competence, even though I felt like I was about to fall apart. Sitting in the chair opposite her desk, I could feel my hands trembling in my lap. "Sarah," I began, my voice shaky, "thank you for meeting with me. There's something important I need to discuss with you. It's about my identity." I took a deep breath and told her everything. I told her about the feelings I'd had my whole life. I told her about my journey of self-discovery. And I told her my name was Doey. I explained that I was in the process of transitioning and that I wanted to start living and working as my authentic self. I finished, my voice barely a whisper. "I hope that this is something the company can support." I braced myself for the worst confusion, dismissal, maybe even being told to pack my things. Sarah listened patiently, her expression unreadable. When I was finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then, she leaned forward, a small professional smile on her face. "Thank you for telling me, Doey," she said. Hearing her say my name, so calmly, so professionally, was like a cool drink of water after a long, grueling marathon. She continued, "Of course, we support you. Our company has a clear non-discrimination policy that includes gender identity. We'll do whatever we need to do to make this a smooth process for you. We can update your email address, your ID badge, and your name in the system. We can also send out a memo to your department, or if you prefer, you can tell people yourself. Just let us know what you need." I was so overwhelmed with relief that I started to cry. They weren't loud, racking sobs, just silent tears streaming down my face. She discreetly pushed a box of tissues across the desk towards me. I had prepared for a battle, and instead, I had been met with acceptance. The following Monday was my first day at work as Doey. It was terrifying and exhilarating. I chose my outfit with the care of a general planning a military campaign, a tasteful black pencil skirt that fell just below the knee, a silk blouse in a muted rose color, and low, sensible heels. My makeup was subtle. My hair was styled neatly. As I walked from the elevator to my desk, I felt the weight of 100 pairs of eyes on me. I could hear the whispers stop as I passed. My little corner of the office had never felt so far away. I sat down at my desk, my heart pounding, and tried to focus on my computer screen. A few minutes later, Mark, one of the senior accountants from the cubicle next to mine, walked over. He hesitated for a second, then gave me a small, slightly awkward smile. "Good morning, Doey," he said. The sound of my name, spoken in the bright, ordinary light of my office, was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I looked up at him, a huge, watery smile breaking across my face. "Good morning, Mark," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. I nearly cried again. It was real. This was my life now. The day was filled with a series of small, significant moments. People using my new name, a female colleague inviting me to have lunch with her group, but the most unexpected interaction came from Evan. Evan was a younger guy, from the IT department. He was known for being a bit of a flirt, but in a harmless, charming sort of way. He came over to my desk in the afternoon to fix an issue with my software. As he worked, he made small talk. "So they got your new name set up in the system and everything?" he asked. "Yes, they did," I said. "HR has been really great." He finished typing and looked up at me, a genuine smile on his face. "That's cool," he said. He paused for a beat, then added, "You know, your voice sounds different, softer. It's nice. It suits you." My cheeks flushed with a sudden, intense heat. I was completely flustered. No one had ever complimented my voice before, especially not a man. It was such a small thing, a throwaway comment, but it landed with a surprising impact. It wasn't just acceptance. It felt like appreciation for the first time. I felt a fluttery, light-headed sensation in my stomach. It was strange, unfamiliar, and utterly wonderful. I felt seen, not as a curiosity, but simply as doughy. And doughy, it turned out, could be an object of a casual, sweet flirtation. The feeling was brand new, and it made me feel more wonderfully, terrifyingly alive than I had ever been before. The support I received at work was the final permission slip I needed to fully embrace my journey. The Estro Balance supplements had opened a door, but now I knew I needed to walk through it properly. It was time to move from the world of herbal remedies to actual medical hormone replacement therapy, HRT. My first appointment with an endocrinologist was a milestone. Sitting in a clinical office, talking openly about my transition with a medical professional, was both nerve-wracking and incredibly validating. There were blood tests, questions about my medical history, and discussions about risks and expectations. It was all very scientific and official. It cemented the reality of my path. This wasn't a phase or a hobby. It was a fundamental, medical-backed part of who I was. A few weeks later, I walked out of a pharmacy with my first prescription for estradiol patches and a testosterone blocker. Applying that first patch to my skin felt even more significant than swallowing that first supplement pill. This was real. This was the point of no return. And the changes, which had been subtle and slow before, began to accelerate. It was like my body had been waiting for the right key to unlock its true potential. Within a few months, the soft buds on my chest began to grow into small, full breasts that ached with a satisfying tenderness. I had to buy new bras, this time with proper cups and underwires. Shopping for them was no longer a secret, shameful act, but an exciting, affirming experience. My waist started to narrow slightly, while my hips and thighs seemed to soften and gain a new, gentle curve. Looking at my profile in the mirror, I could see a subtle but unmistakable shift in my silhouette, a move towards a classic feminine hourglass shape. My skin, already softer, became almost velvety to the touch, and the fine, downy hair on my arms became nearly invisible. Even my body odor changed, losing its musky, masculine edge and becoming something sweeter, cleaner. One of the most surprising changes was the way I moved. I didn't consciously try to walk differently, but my gait naturally shifted. With the changes in my hip structure and center of gravity, my steps became lighter, my hips swaying just a little as I walked. It felt more natural, more fluid, than the heavy, clumsy way I had moved my entire life. With these physical changes came a surge of confidence. I was no longer just trying on an identity, I was inhabiting it. This newfound assurance was reflected in my personal style. I graduated from safe, modest dresses to clothes that truly expressed who I was. I discovered I loved the way a well-fitting bodycon dress with a light floral pattern hugged my new curves. I fell in love with comfortable wedge heels that gave me a little height and changed my posture, making me feel more elegant. My hair, now long and healthy, reached past my shoulders. I learned how to style it, spending happy hours in front of my mirror, creating soft brown waves that frame my face. The morning ritual of getting dressed became a source of pure joy. Standing in front of my closet, filled with dresses, blouses, and skirts, choosing what Dowie would wear today. The simple, mechanical act of reaching behind my back to zip up a dress was a daily affirmation, a small moment of connection with my body that made me smile every time. There you are. I would think to myself, this is you. This is really you. The most difficult part of my transition was yet to come, telling my family. I had put it off, terrified of their reaction. My parents were traditional, and my older sister, Jessica, and I had always been close, but this was something so far outside our shared experience. I finally decided I couldn't keep hiding such a huge part of my life from them. I wrote them a long, heartfelt letter, and then, a week later, I called. The phone conversation with my mom was one of the hardest I've ever had. There were tears, confusion, and a lot of questions. She was scared for me. She was worried about how hard my life would be. She stumbled over my name and pronouns. It was painful, but beneath the confusion, I could hear her love for me, unwavering. I don't understand it. David, Doey, she said, her voice thick with tears. But you're my child, and I love you. A few weeks after that call, a small package arrived in the mail. It was from my mom. Inside was a simple pair of silver hoop earrings. There was no note, just the earrings. I held them in my hand and cried, not with sadness, but with overwhelming gratitude. It was her way of saying, I see you. I'm trying. The real breakthrough came with my sister. Jessica invited me to lunch a month after I came out to her. I was so nervous, but the moment she saw me, she wrapped me in a fierce hug. We talked for hours, and then she reached across the table and took my hand. I have a question for you, she said, her expression serious. I'm getting married next year. My heart sank. I thought she was going to tell me I couldn't come, that it would be too weird for the family. And, she continued, a smile breaking across her face, I was wondering if you would be my maid of honor. I stared at her, stunned into silence. What? She laughed. You're my sister. You always have been. Who else would I ask? This time, the tears came in a torrent. I leaned across the table and hugged her, crying into her shoulder. All the fear and anxiety I had held about my family for so long just melted away in that moment. I wasn't just tolerated or accepted. I was embraced. I was her sister. My professional life was blossoming in parallel with my personal one. My newfound confidence translated into my work. I was more vocal in meetings, more willing to share my ideas, more engaged with my colleagues. The shy, withdrawn David was gone, replaced by a confident, capable Doey. My superiors noticed. About a year after my transition, I was offered a promotion. It wasn't just a step up. It was a move. The company was opening a new branch in a city a few hours away, and they wanted me to go there and manage the accounting team. The offer was both thrilling and terrifying. It meant leaving the safety net of the office where everyone knew my story, but it also represented something incredible, a fresh start, an opportunity to be in a place where I wouldn't be Doey, who used to be David. I would just be Doey, the new manager, period. I took the job. The new city was a clean slate. My new team only ever knew me as a woman. There were no awkward pronoun slips, no curious stares. I was simply their boss. And here, in this new environment, I experienced another first. I was noticed by men, not in an aggressive or uncomfortable way, but in small, respectful gestures. A male colleague from another department holding a door open for a little longer than necessary. Another one making a point to compliment a presentation I gave. One even nervously asked if I might like to get coffee sometime. I was flustered and politely declined, not yet ready for the complexities of dating, but the interactions themselves were a powerful affirmation. They weren't just seeing me as a woman. They were seeing me as an attractive, desirable woman. It was a layer of my identity I had never, ever considered. It was bewildering, a little intimidating, but it also planted a new seed of confidence deep inside me. For the first time, I felt not just authentic, but whole. The move to the new city marked the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one defined by a quiet, settled peace. The frantic energy of the early transition days, the constant worry, the intense focus on every physical change, the fear of rejection had subsided. It was replaced by a sense of calm and a deep, abiding contentment. I had found my equilibrium. My life took on a gentle, pleasing rhythm. I found a small apartment flooded with natural light, with a balcony where I could grow flowers. It was the first place that truly felt like my home. Not just a place where I slept, I filled it with soft textures, warm colors, and books. My closet, once a source of anxiety and secrets, was now my happy place. It was filled with beautiful dresses, stylish work attire, and comfortable weekend clothes that all felt like me. There wasn't a single item left from my old life as David. That life felt like a story about someone else, someone I had known a long, long time ago. My evenings were my own. Some nights, I would indulge in a long skincare routine, a meditative process of cleansing and moisturizing the skin I had come to love. Other nights, I would curl up on my plush sofa with a novel and a cup of herbal tea, reveling in the simple, profound joy of solitude without loneliness. I even started to tentatively explore the social world I had been too scared to enter before. My female colleagues would invite me out for happy hour, and I would go, sipping a glass of wine and laughing along with their stories about work and dating. Men were still a source of slight bewilderment for me. The occasional lunch invitation or the gesture of a man pulling out my chair for me at a restaurant dinner still sent a surprise blush to my cheeks. I wasn't actively looking for a relationship. I wasn't ready to share my life, which I had fought so hard to build, with anyone else just yet, for now. It was enough to simply be present in these moments, to enjoy the feeling of being seen and appreciated, to savor the simple courtesies of a world that now saw me as just another woman. As my own life settled into this comfortable peace, I found myself thinking more and more about the person I used to be, the scared, confused individual hiding in a beige apartment, terrified to even Google the words that might describe the ache in their soul. I felt a growing desire to reach back and help others who were just starting on that same frightening path. I found a local LGBTQ+ center that hosted a support group for transgender and gender-questioning individuals. The first time I attended a meeting, I just listened. I heard stories that were so achingly familiar, the fear, the shame, the secret joy of wearing a piece of clothing that felt right for the first time, the terror of coming out to family and friends. My heart went out to every person in that room. The next week I spoke. My voice was a little shaky at first, but I told them my story. I told them about the supplement store, the purple satin nightgown, and the kindness of the saleswoman who called me ma'am. I talked about my first day at work as doughy, my first hormone patch, and the moment my sister asked me to be her maid of honor. I shared my fears and my triumphs. When I finished, the room was quiet for a moment, and then a young person, their eyes filled with tears, whispered, "Thank you. I really needed to hear that." From that day on, the support group became a central part of my life. I became a regular, then a mentor, then a co-facilitator. I found a deep, unexpected sense of purpose in being a guide for others. I could offer practical advice about hormones and navigating the workplace. I could provide a shoulder to cry on when a family member reacted poorly. Most importantly, I could offer them hope. I could be the living, breathing proof that it was possible to get through the fear and the uncertainty, and to build a happy, fulfilling, and authentic life on the other side. My own journey, with all its pain and confusion, had become a map that I could now use to help others find their way. About 3 years after I moved, I received a call from corporate headquarters. My work as a manager had been noticed, and the numbers at my branch were excellent. They were offering me another promotion, a big one. It was a senior management position back at the main office, a significant step up in salary and responsibility. The David I used to be would have jumped at the chance without a second thought. It was the pinnacle of the career path he had been on. It meant success, status, and validation. But I wasn't David anymore. I thought about the offer for a week. I pictured myself in a big corporate office, immersed in high-level strategy and endless meetings. And then I pictured my life now, my bright apartment, my flower-filled balcony, and my Tuesday evenings at the support group, sitting in a circle of folding chairs, sharing stories and offering comfort. I realized I didn't want the big promotion. I didn't need that kind of validation anymore. My definition of success had changed. It wasn't about climbing a corporate ladder. It was about living a life that felt meaningful and true. I had spent the first 33 years of my life running from myself, running towards an idea of a life that was never really mine. I'd been running my whole life, I told my boss on the phone when I respectfully declined the offer. Now, I just want to live. I chose to stay. I chose my quiet, peaceful life. I chose my community. I chose purpose over prestige. It was the easiest decision I had ever made. Today, I turned 40. 8 years have passed since I first walked into that supplement shop. A lifetime ago. This morning, I stood in front of my mirror, not with the confusion or despair of my younger self, but with a quiet sense of peace. The face looking back at me is my own. The laugh lines around my eyes are from genuine smiles. The soft brown hair, now streaked with a few distinguished strands of silver, is mine. The body I inhabit, with its soft curves and gentle lines, feels like home. It is a body that has been shaped not just by hormones, but by years of self-love and acceptance. My life is beautifully, wonderfully ordinary. I am still a manager at the same company branch. I still live in my sun-drenched apartment. I am an aunt to my sister's 2 wonderful children, who have only ever known me as Aunt Doey. My parents, in their own quiet way, have come to fully embrace the daughter they have. We have found a new, more honest way to love each other. My work with the support group continues to be the anchor of my life. I've seen so many people come through our doors, lost and terrified, and watch them blossom as they find the courage to be themselves. To have played a small part in their journeys is the greatest achievement of my life. I sometimes think back to David, that lost and lonely man. I don't feel pity for him, or anger. I feel a deep, gentle compassion. He did the best he could with the tools he had. He carried a heavy burden for so long, and I am so incredibly grateful to him for being brave enough, on one gray, unremarkable Tuesday, to take a different turn and walk into a store that would change everything. He took the first, terrifying step that allowed me to be born. I looked at my reflection in the mirror one last time before heading out the door to meet my sister for a birthday brunch. A small smile played on my lips. The long, difficult road of the past had led me here, to this moment of profound and simple contentment. There was no more disconnect, no more static, no more feeling of wearing a costume that was too tight. There was only harmony, body and soul, finally aligned. This life, it finally fits me perfectly.